Welcome to Mostly Politics with Bob and Sherry.
Today we'll have the pleasure to interview Pastor Greg White and his lovely wife Marquita, and with the lovely nickname Nee-See. So welcome, guys. I know we've been trying to schedule this interview for quite some time.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having us.
Pastor Greg White, his wife, has a daughter. Her name is Micah. Last year, unfortunately, like so many young people and so many people in America, she passed away due to fentanyl poisoning. And so the courage you guys have and to be on this show, and I want to personally say we're doing this as a dedication and tribute to her and so many families like you guys and so many people like her. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about your daughter. I know she's just a lovely young lady, and she has all kinds of friends. And I know her personally, and it was such a publicized news, and I know that has to be very difficult. But tell us a little bit about her and as a person.
Micah was a very, very adventurous, spirited young woman, extremely spirited. I can go back to where we had taken the kids roller skating, and my son, who's a few years older than her, he got out onto the roller skating rink and he was clinging to that wall. And Micah got out there, and they had to have been about 8, 9 years of age or something like that. And so Micah gets out there, and she always had big bright eyes. And she got out there and she got into the middle of traffic because these skaters were going around and they were skating, and Micah got out there. She was always fearless.
Yes.
And so as I stood on the sidelines without skates myself, I noticed, I said, I have two personalities here. One who's going to be a little bit more cautious, and the other one, Micah, who's going to plunge into it. Yes, go into the deep. Yes, go into the deep. And so she was just very, very spirited. She was, she loved people. She loved her friends, and she had a lot of friends who were gay, and loved them. Micah did not see color. She didn't see gender. She saw people, and she loved people.
Tell us about how difficult it is that you're a pastor and she's a pastor's child. And when this news came out, what was that like?
Well, let's take the pastor's hat off for a minute. But just being a father, hearing that, devastated. I know others that have had to go and identify a family and loved one's body, but never thought, just like probably all of us, never thought it would be me. And it was even strange how they tried to get a hold of us. They kept calling my sister, like 3, 4 in the morning. And so she finally said, bruh, I think you better call. I don't know what's going on. And so, because Micah would always call, text mom, text me, going over friends after late work. I'm going to, be there. I'll text you in the morning. I'm fine. She would always, try to let us know what's going on, or that, I'll be a little late, maybe even an hour or so, but I'll be home. And so we didn't hear from her all weekend. And so here it is Sunday, we responded. And so they said, well, they couldn't tell us too much. So we went down to the coroner's office. And so after talking back and forth, and emotions was getting high, and adrenaline is flowing, they finally brought us a picture. And so, of course, at that point, it was just pandemonium. And we wanted to see her. They wouldn't allow us to see her, but they did bring a picture up. And so, um, from that point, just she was a daddy's girl, and so um,
Do you know how she got into drugs and ultimately fentanyl?
um, well, we knew she drank. I mean, we've had these discussions, not just being a PK's kid, as we call it, but just coming from a home that, we believe in Christ and, we believe in living a holy life and a righteous life. And so we've had these conversations, once she went off to college. And I would often say to her, a couple things I would say to her, as well as, just being a dad. I know how she left our house. And so I would often say to her, you know,
Come back the same way.
come back the same way. Yes, come back the same way. And but I was noticing, I know she was drinking beer, and I knew she was drinking some alcohol, and so I know. I mean, hey, my college times, hey, I did the same thing, but I know that times are different, and I've heard stories and things of that nature, and so we would have these conversations when she was home, especially when she came home and she wanted to hang out with friends. And I would tell her, when you come home, you're on my time. You have a curfew, and I expect you to be in at this time and that time. And so a couple times she came in some tipsy, and I said to her, I said, I'm not going to stand for that, And so anyway, yeah, we knew about that. And, you know, uh, I'll say too, what kid doesn't remember the one president we had? You remember he smoked marijuana, and so he said he didn't inhale. But I knew she smoked, and my wife, she's never done any of that. I knew the smell, I knew the look, I knew the walk, all the uh, um, things that happen when you're intoxicated. And so we had these conversations. And but as far as the fentanyl, it wasn't something that I knew. We knew her and her friends. It was, again, fentanyl is nothing that you smoke, you do any of that with. But it's, it's a drug they used in the hospital because they wanted to give her sister some fentanyl when she was there for COVID, and her lungs were collapsing and different things of that nature. But to find out, through some family and whatever, that fentanyl is being laced in marijuana, cocaine, and kind of everything, I was telling her, to be on guard. First, I told her, don't do it. That was the number one thing I said, don't do it. But then I know too, growing up, when you tell somebody don't do something, they're gonna do it. There's going to be some kind of trial and error somewhere along the line. And,
Right.
So I would always tell her to be careful. If you got to drink, if you have to, if you're somewhere, have somebody watch you drink, you go to the bathroom, come back, your drink's uncovered, don't drink that. The date rape drink, drugs, and all those other different things. So I always believe in my wife can confer that I've always been triple X with my children. I want them to know everything that's out there, everything that I know, everything I did. I was always very open with them as far as what I did, and please don't go that same direction that I was in. Don't do that. So the mistakes I made, I would always tell them, I expect you not to make those mistakes. Well, as children as they are, in America, that they're going to try. But yeah, this whole thing about the fentanyl, I could talk.
So
She had no idea.
it doesn't sound like she was an addict.
No,
She
no,
was
oh
not.
no,
No.
Sounds like a
No, she's
recreational.
not.
not at
No,
all.
I know she's
Micah
not.
had
No,
absolutely. She
wow.
had no idea. She had no No idea at
No,
all.
correct, of what was in the drug.
Of what was
Yeah.
in the drug.
Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So did she
She's a
take a
very trusting
tablet? Do you
person.
know?
It was laced with it. It was,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, it was laced.
Wow.
And she and her two friends,
Right.
unfortunately, had the portion where it was laced heavily, and it took their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this wasn't anything that that was a habit for her.
No.
It cannot really be habit forming because it's so deadly.
One little speck can take you out.
As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
one of the deaconesses in our church, her husband, Brother Jim, was on this. He had medical issues, and so she said, "This is something that I can't even touch.
Right.
If I get it on my fingers," she said, "it could be
Go get in your
be-
blood system that fast."
Exactly. You know, even
Right.
the detective had said that, you know, there have been officers on scene such as this
Oh yes.
where
Yeah.
if they were inhaling too much
In
of
the-
it,
yes.
if they
In
had
the
touched it,
Mm-hmm.
it can really, really cause
Yes.
damage. And the dosage that was in what she had obviously was deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. And since we're kind of talking about that, we're at liberty to say a little bit of this from the first hearing. One of the other girls that was with them, she got so sick, she had to go lay down, and she had to go walk for a while, and her stomach was really messed up. So she probably got a portion of it, but not as much as the other three did. And she couldn't even go to work. So when we heard her testimony of how she felt and how she was really messed up by it the whole day and the next 2 days or so. And so that's just from, we don't know how much part that she got. But yeah, it's deadly.
Yeah.
It's deadly.
Yeah.
So did they catch the guy? Did they catch
They
him?
have caught him. Hearings have couple just preliminary things, but as far as I know, the hearings will begin in January, and so yeah.
Is this guy in jail or he's out on bail?
He's in jail. He's in jail.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
They've been trying
Yeah.
to get the higher upper guys, and
Yes.
there's so many that from that officer and other things we've heard. There was another girl probably a few weeks afterwards on the south side as well that got a hold of some. And so, yeah, across the country. I have a daughter in Atlanta.
Across the country.
You know.
It is an issue. That's the reason I'm so glad you guys willing to come on talk about it, because it is an issue that is such a epidemic in the United States. It's probably more deadly than COVID, because with COVID you have a chance to get better.
Correct.
And it's not impacting young people as much as impacting older people with comorbidity. The fentanyl is flowing through the borders and is manufactured in China.
Yes, it is.
And these are, yes, it is. I mean, and oftentimes I tell people, you have to understand, nothing will come out of China without the Chinese government's permission.
That's right.
Okay? So this is done intentionally.
Yes, it is. It's deliberate.
My perspective.
Yes.
Right?
You just told a story. Young girls on the south side drinking, maybe smoking a little weed, and somebody, slipped some fentanyl without their knowledge.
Exactly.
And your daughter, did anyone else die?
Yeah, two other
others, yes.
gentlemen.
Two of them died.
It was 5 or 6 of them in all. But 3 of them, and then the other girl was really sick. And so, yeah.
When did this happen?
July last year.
30th.
Was it on the news?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
even remember.
It was on the
yeah.
news. It was a big news.
Big
Yeah,
news.
because it was
Okay, I missed it.
3 bartender. Micah was one of them. Another bartender, he's a bar manager from Industry on Butler
Correct.
Street.
Yeah.
And then there was another bartender who bartends at Brewers,
Correct.
who is a gay bar. And
Correct.
So it was pretty big
Yes,
news.
it was.
It was
Yes, it
it
was.
was very shocking because we knew Micah completely differently. She likes to party, like to have
Mm-hmm.
fun, but she never does. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
this is a one-time thing.
Right.
That's why it's uh, to people that know
Mm-hmm.
her. I think we were all very
Oh yeah.
surprised because this is not her. Now, a few weeks ago, there was another fentanyl overdose.
Mm-hmm.
This girl passed away and left a 7-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So from our business, we've seen from 2015 on,
Mm-hmm.
seen it was a heroin overdose. Now it's fentanyl. We were listening to the news. They're coming up with something now that is even 20 times more deadly than fentanyl. And I'm thinking, how can this be
That's what I'm
possible?
Right.
thinking.
Right.
How?
Right.
It's frightening,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is completely
Oh
intentional.
yes.
And Pastor, you're a pastor in Penn
Mm-hmm.
Hills, and it is a very diverse
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said you don't. Nobody ever thought this would happen to us personally. Now, from your parishioners, have this been happening to some of the families coming in?
They have known of many of their friends that have had something laced with it. So just from what the officer said to us, whether the guy that sold it or whoever gave it to him, they laced it, and it's just like anything else. It's a filler, to make more money and to make it stretch. But for people today to know how deadly it is a deliberate murder.
It is.
It's a deliberate murder,
It is.
and so it's something that we're making our nieces, nephews, great nieces and nephews, so many neighbors, just aware of how deadly it is, and to be careful because kids today are so gullible. Okay, you're smoking weed, but you don't know what's in the weed. You know, okay,
Right.
you may have freebase a little bit, but you don't know what was in that. Back in my day, speedball and heroin and all those things, and
Yeah.
so you didn't know what was in that, but you kind of trusted the people. Today, you can't trust anybody. You can't trust
No.
anybody. And so, back in my day, it was local guys. We knew them. But today, like this guy, he was from somewhere else and nobody knew him. And so for whoever it was that bought it, they took a chance. They took a chance. And so it's just like Russian roulette, rolling the dice with your life. Remember the young man that was in college? And instead of him asking his parents or somebody in the dorm to get him something for his head, he ordered something online.
Yes.
He took a pill and never woke up.
It was laced.
It was laced with
He
fentanyl.
wanted Percocet.
Percocet
I
or
think that
something.
the organization is called Sons of Charlie. I heard him on K-Love Radio the other night. He ordered a Percocet
That's correct.
online,
Correct.
and it's laced with
Right.
fentanyl. He took it, and just 15 minutes later,
Gone.
died 15
Gone.
minutes later.
Yeah.
Well, what they're doing, the fentanyl is so
Very
inexpensive
much.
because, like you said, it takes only a small
That's
amount.
right.
So, there probably was no Percocet whatsoever in that. It's just, the heroin, the pills. The fentanyl will get you high. You just don't realize it's a fentanyl
Correct.
high. And,
Correct.
the people doing it, I mean, they're not controlled environment scientists. And, so you don't know what dose you're
Correct.
getting.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't.
Pastor, would you mind sharing a quick testimony how you came to Christ?
Well, unsaved, out there in the world doing worldly things,
Okay.
and I was going through a rough patch. This is my second marriage, and so my first marriage was a flop, and so my sister was already born again. We grew up in the church, and of course, as so many young people do, we go our own way, and so it was one of the drawing of the Holy Spirit in my life to come back to Him, and so He used my sister, and so she invited me to come to church with her on a Thanksgiving service, and so I went, and so it wasn't nothing that I was foreign to. My grandfather and grandmother, they were in church, and grandfather was a bishop. He had 6 churches, and church was right next door to where I grew up at, across the street and next door. And so, yeah. So anyway, I visited my sister's church at the time, and just really felt the drawing of the Holy Spirit, and I went back again, maybe about a month later. And so at that point, that's when the Lord really grabbed me and pulled me back in. And so that's been some 40 some years ago, and been walking and running and living for Him ever since.
So how long have you been leading your church in Penn Hills?
Okay. Well, our church, Showers of Blessings Church Ministries, is a non-denominational church. This is year 28 that we've been pastoring. And
Wow.
Yeah, December 5th will be year 28.
Now, all your children grew up in church?
That's correct. All 4 of them.
What was the impact of COVID for your church community, and how have your church been overcoming that?
Well, the impact, just like all the rest of the churches, every other Reformation, it was devastating. Of course, we don't try to operate in fear, but oftentimes fear kind of grips you. You see people get it. We've had 3 different strands, and we've had deaths. Some immediate in the family as well. Me and my wife had it. My sister-in-law, God rest her soul, she didn't endure COVID, and so she died, I think, 7-9 weeks after Micah, and from COVID. We all 3 got it at the same time, and we were really hoping she would come over to our hospice. She didn't. She ended up going to the hospital, and she never came home. And so, yes, just like, everything else during that major time, it was just devastating. So, we did like everybody else did, and we went to social media. And so now trying to overcome it, and still many churches are the aftermath, still trying to bounce back from it. Some of the older ones are still a little leery, and some of the young ones, we have them come and kind of go. A lot of people now are working on Sunday because people don't want to work. But we're making adjustments. We're tweaking everything, and but we have been back since I think July of last year, and so we've been social media, cyber church, as well as in person.
And actually,
Okay.
we never really closed.
Mm-hmm.
He and I were always there.
Correct.
The doors were always open. There was definitely enough space.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like he had said, it's fear, and I can understand and respect that.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So, but we're doing everything that we know to do, and the government tell us to do. The masks, the hand sanitizers, gloves, distancing, all that has been in place and still in place. So, because we want to keep everybody safe.
How's attendance? Would you say your attendance is back to what it was pre-COVID?
No. No.
Is it a big difference?
Enough. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just like some others that we know, people are still, on the low end, and some, other new people have come, and newly born again people have come, but it's still a challenge because a lot of people have gotten into the groove of working on Sunday. And so, um, I yeah, it seems as though that's what it is today. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
work, so Sundays is very accessible for people. So people are doing that, and they're jumping online. We see them, in their car and different things, and either coming, getting it late, or heading to the next job. But
Yeah.
hmm hmm
What what about all these social political issues? I mean, things are pretty heated
hmm
now. Issues like abortion and you know same sex
hmm
marriage, all
hmm
that. I mean, how it just seems like a tough environment for pastors. Between this politics and the COVID, and I think COVID just made the politics much
hmm
worse.
hmm hmm Well, politics. Well, oftentimes parishioners, Christendom try to avoid politics, but we can't because we really encourage everybody, first of all, to vote. We may not like all of the those that are running, but like I heard one person say, you choose the worst, the lesser of the two evils. And so,
Sure.
some may like what you believe and others may not. And so, we do that. We just trust God, that whoever He allows to go into the office, we continue to do what the Bible tells us to do is pray for our leadership, that they would make good decisions for our country, good decisions for helping with the other countries as well. That we help as far as like now we try not to get involved with the Ukraine thing, but weapons and food and shelter and bringing them in many into America. So it's a tough time, but we try to stand. I'm not that's a bad word. We're not going to say try to stand. We do stand on what the Bible tells us, and we trust God. So as far as the gay and lesbian thing, we every probably every family has been hit with that. We have some in our family, and so we love them. We're not bashing anybody about their preference and their orientation, but we always hope that questions will arise that we can address to them their sin. And 'cause the Bible says we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So it's not just because they're gay or they're lesbian, but you may be have a gambling problem. You may
Amen. Yeah.
be a whoremonger. You may be any of those things. So it's sin, and we're not picking at what sin it is, but it's sin. It's wrong, and so the Bible has a remedy for that. And so we just want to give them the remedy in the spirit of love, and let them know that there's help for them. The Bible speaks about the balm in Gilead. There's a balm in Gilead that heals our soul. And so yeah, we handle every case, every situation like that, whether it's personal up front, somebody we meet, um, you know. But yeah, but the main thing is, just like so many times people say, Bible thumpers, you beat people over the head with the Bible. No, we don't do that. But we will give you truth.
That's right.
We will give you the truth.
Well, I
In
want to
love,
talk a little bit.
in love,
In,
because the Word of God says, "With loving kindness
hmm
have I drawn thee." Have
hmm
I drawn thee? So
hmm
we do want to do that, but we also have to give the truth
That's correct.
as well.
hmm
so coming back to as a
hmm
parent and so many parents out there, and what would you say to our legislators? Because right now we do have somewhat of an open border. We are having, I personally think it's crazy to manufacture our medicine overseas.
Very much so.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, because China is essentially the adversary to United
Yes.
States.
Yes.
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 It will be nothing for them if they control our
hmm
medication. How can we trust it, even
Exactly.
if the medication come into to the
That's
pharmacy.
correct.
How can we trust it?
You can't.
So,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they could just say, okay, they can put a little bit of fentanyl in all the
Hmm.
pills, even come into the
Hmm.
pharmacy and just poison the whole
That's right.
population. I'm
And
not
we
trying to
learned
scare
during
anybody, but
Hmm.
COVID the drugs that we needed because other countries needed them as well. They wouldn't ship them to
Hmm.
us. You know, antibiotics and things in India. They said no, we're keeping them for
Right.
us. So the U.S. can't get basic
Hmm.
drugs.
Hmm. Hmm.
so as a parent, regardless on which side of the aisle you are, I think we all can come to agree is we want to bring those medicine manufacturing back to United
Yes.
States
Hmm.
and have some kind of control
Yes,
here,
Yes,
that's
correct?
indeed,
correct.
for
Oh yes.
sure.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
For sure.
Hmm.
yeah. So let's go on to another topic, and I want to talk about racism in the United States, and you know, we have one side and saying there's this racism, and then another side. Now I don't, of course, because I know Micah, and she transcended. No one looked at her as a black girl. Everybody loved her. Her boyfriend actually. I don't know. I think his fiance, and he's
Hmm.
Caucasian, coming from very rural. His family come from a very rural area,
Hmm.
conservative
Hmm.
family. So there was no racism there. But I know that's probably different 28 years ago when you started the church. Can you talk about that, and how have you seen things progressed, or we're going backwards?
Um. Yes. Oh, we're definitely going backwards. I can even think about when I grew up back in the, oh boy, 60s and 70s, and you know how things were, but once again, always very open with my kids and all kids. You know that this is something that we don't practice. We don't practice racism. You know, we practice, you know, loving everybody. All of us, when we bleed, it's red.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, uh, we just all happen to have different colors of our skin. God designed it that way. If we looked at the book of Genesis, from Adam, you had Ham, Japheth, and Japheth, and oh boy, can't even think of the third one. But but you had uh, uh, um, uh, um, one that went to Africa, one that went to the Asian country, and one that went to the European country. And so
Mm-hmm.
God populated the world through these three men. And so this was his design. His design wasn't to, you know, formulate racism. His design was to populate the world, and to, of course, spread the good news of Jesus Christ. And so, but again, it's a mindset. Where I grew up in
Mm-hmm.
Lawrenceville, I had white buddies, Italian and Polish. I remember Johnny Popinski. His
Mm-hmm.
father they used to take us fishing and hunting all the time. We used to go up to Cook's Forest and have fun. Um, uh, uh, um, Bloomfield, the Lapones. I knew all them. I used to go in the restaurant in the back, and can't think of the name of the restaurant right there by the Bloomfield Bridge. It's something else now, and they couldn't.
It
Yeah,
was
I know
Bloomfield
it.
Bridge Tavern.
No, what's the make a right?
It was an Italian
Italian
place
place right
before.
on the corner. She couldn't
Mm-hmm.
speak a bit of
Yep.
English, but we go back and she
Mm-hmm.
said, you know, we come back and we ate together, you know. But there were times where we encountered racism, you know, for 50th Street, Butler Street, and us at down to 34th Street. You know, would be different qualms that we would have, and you know, but we would have our fight, have a fair one, as we would say, and we squelch it. It's over and done with. We're
Mm-hmm.
going back to school on at Arsenal or Woosler on Monday, and we're going to be friends and play again. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you know, it's another ball game now, and again, it's breeded, it's taught, and it's sad, you know, because we can fight together at wartime, but we can't come
Mm-hmm.
home from war, and we can't recognize some things just everyday life, you know, that um, we're all here together. Why can't we live together? Why can't we get along together? You know, why can't we, uh, um, um, you know, make things better. I mean, what's wrong that we can't do that? Because like Jewish proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, and so the word ghetto came from the Jewish culture, you know, and so they recognize that, and so I just I understand the problem, but society, our culture, media, uh, TV, everybody is just really injecting venom into our world, injecting this. We're picking up the guns now. We're shooting everything, and so it's not that you're shooting your own people. You're shooting people for no reason at all. You're in the wrong neighborhood. You're the wrong color. Come on, nobody made us this color. God made us this color. You know, and so again, God didn't breed evil. He didn't breed violence or hatred or racism. That's a man thing. And so until we correct that, we're going to continue to destroy ourselves.
What do you think's the solution? What do you think's a way we can move in the right direction?
That's a big question. Wow.
That would take a lot. I just want to interject and say, he has experienced that. My story is somewhat different in that I will say in growing up, for some people, they considered me to be too light, too fair-skinned.
Mm-hmm.
And for other people, I was not light enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned to just really just love me for who I am. I can remember in my home when I think I was about 10. I was in 5th grade. I was about 10. And some African American girls were teasing me, about being so light. So I asked my mom, I said, Mommy, I said, am I, and of course we used the term colored or Negro at that time. And I said, Mommy, I said, am I colored or am I white? And she said, Nee-See, you're colored, you're a Negro. So after that, I was fine. I knew what I was. I grew up in a Christian home, knew who I was, to whom I belonged, and that was to the Lord. And so I was fine with it. So I did not experience a lot of things that my husband experienced growing up. I will say that as a parent of an African American son, yes, I am constantly praying for him, as I did with Micah, but I'm constantly praying for him. He goes out in various areas. His job sends him there. And so we are constantly praying for him. His father has told him, what to do if you are pulled over, but then again, we have heard cases where that person did exactly what they were supposed to do and they were still murdered. I wouldn't even say killed, they were murdered. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the answer. However, I was out at breakfast this morning with a friend of mine, and we were just talking about how even in our schools, we are interested in making sure that our children know how to read, compute math, things of that nature. But there are some angry children out here, and children who have been left alone during COVID. Children, a lot of times the school system, your teacher, when you are in school and you come to school with a bruise or whatever, that teacher has to investigate and tell the social worker. But during COVID, there were children who I'm sure were abused. They didn't have a voice. They didn't have an advocate. That teacher is usually their advocate. They saw parents frustrated because they had to stay home. Now, so many things went on. But anyway, so it's our kids need to learn how to what were we saying? Do conflict resolution. How do you resolve conflict? You know, how do you get along? And it does. It begins in the lower grades. And how do we tolerate differences? And I would love to be in a history class or a social studies class, Black history class, whatever, nowadays, to hear this is prime time for our teachers to really have open discussions with the children, with these teenagers. So I don't know what's going on. I'm a former school teacher, but I was with elementary. So I don't know.
You know, not long ago, Bill Maher did a montage, and he was sort of criticizing Hollywood. Where do you think this idea comes from to shoot people to, revenge? So he just did a montage of all the movies and all, not all of them, but just how that's a theme throughout our entertainment industry. The movies that you go to, that someone's wronged in the beginning and they end up getting revenge in the end by killing people, guns or whatever. And that, if you think about it, it's a constant theme in a lot of movies and television.
And games.
Yes.
Games.
And
oh boy, that's big. Wow. And we have too much accessibility to make bombs and get weapons online.
Yeah.
And boy, we can go into so many different topics from here.
Right. I mean, I'm fascinated. Yesterday, Bob and I, we have this talk show now. We do it every Monday. And you were talking about movies and games and everything. Me coming from a different culture, we moved to Hong Kong when I was 10 years old. If you watch the Hong Kong movie with Jackie Chan and Andy Lau, and it was always where the police will have the guns. It was always the good and the bad. Okay, but so even we grew up watching this, but no one in our head thinking I'm going to seek revenge and by murdering someone. And I think because a lot of times is that we have so much homework. Our class was so challenging. That's entertainment. There's a reality, and you're right. It was what's taught in school, what's in the media, and the fact that poor kids have a chance to advance in Hong Kong, because China doesn't have a lot of race issue, but there's a class issue. There's a poor and the rich, and that happens in every culture as well. But everything is merit-based. So if you can study well, you are successful, your economic status is not restricting you where you're at. And the school was, you test into those schools. So it doesn't matter if you live in Penn Hills. If you are a student, you go to an A school. And if you're a B student, you go to B school. So if you are families of millionaires, you're testing on a lower grade. You go into a lower grade school. We just had that discussion yesterday, and it is such a problem to me because I watch what China does to their kids, okay, and I watch what happened in the United States. In the 10 to 20 years, our kids are not going to be able to compete at all. We have a hard time competing now. I'm not talking about black, white. I'm talking about just American kids. It doesn't matter if you're Asian, you're in East India. With the education system we have right now, my child will go back to China. He will have to go to 3rd grade. He's in 7th grade right now. My kid will probably have to start at 4th grade. Okay, so it just impossible to compete.
Right. We've had this conversation, my wife and I, as far as, I think on a scale, I remember seeing a chart of probably 30 different countries in the educational system, how long they go to school. 10 months out the year. But other countries went 12 months out the year and probably 10 hours a day. And then everything else that they did was involving education. And so I remember on that chart, out of say 30 different countries, America was probably 28 on the bottom. But yeah, we don't put enough emphasis on education. We don't put enough money into education. Our money goes elsewhere. But yeah, I look at the other countries, and their focus is on their children. It's on the future. It's on making sure that their culture and their children continue to excel. I could probably give you some other examples as well. Some students that I know that help tutor other students, and they're from other countries. And but our children have become lazy. They're not focused. These cell phones have become a thorn in our country's flesh.
They're babysitters.
They're babysitters. Too many things are accessible to them, between cyber sex, wrong thinking, TikTok, so many things that are dulling our children's minds, and their minds are in so many other different places today. And so we are really we're stabbing ourselves in the foot. We are really
and I think parents
going to hell in a basket.
Parents are
So,
not adamant.
Pastor, do you live stream your services?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna. This has been a great interview, and I would love to have
Something
you guys
happened.
come back again to talk about other topic, because I can talk to you forever. I think all of us agreed on different things. Actually, Bob and I just talked about the education yesterday on our talk show. Oh, Bob's gone. Yeah, it is a big problem,
It is,
you know.
very much.
Now, this is not going to be on our actual broadcast, but that's what I was telling Bob. I said the fact that our government and our media try to separate people by race or immigration status or whatnot, if you would just do merit-based and say if you're A student, you go to A school, you get the best teacher, best resources, and then if there's nothing wrong being the C or the D student, they're just trying to guide you to a different career path. That's all it is, you know. So the people that are not academically achieving, they can be a mechanic, but you learn that early in life, so they have some sort of guidance.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, the top 3 students from my school, they all live in government housings, but they study so hard, so they were able to get themselves out of the jam, you know. So I don't know where Bob went.
Yeah, but there are, and one of your questions was, in as far as helping direct our young people, there's some programs that we're familiar with, and we've helped some other young people get into to get a trade.
Okay.
You know, and so I know there's 3 or 4 that have been very successful with going through the program, and making really a decent wage. They're doing really good, and so we know these programs are out there, but oftentimes our young people can't pass the urine test because they rather smoke and drink and all those other things instead of getting a decent job, a nice career, and be able to, once you get married, to be able to take care of your family and as well as have a retirement fund. But
again, we go back to the media. They're not encouraging people to get married. They're not encouraging you to have a family, live in family life. It's all about me, right? So, and they are also feminizing the boys. So if you're feminizing the boys, how are they going to want to get married?
Yes.
This is a great topic. And we're gonna have to end this. So, but I would love for you to come back, and I want to talk to you about those programs you mentioned that
Can I-
you can help
Can
young
I
kids.
can I just say something also, just very quickly?
Absolutely.
Please.
Even as far as billboards in various neighborhoods, there, if you have a more affluent neighborhood and more affluent neighborhoods, the billboards are about their finances or job careers and things like that. And in a neighborhood, a poorer neighborhood, less, anyway.
Influential.
Right.
Mhm.
Their billboards are not so much about encouraging the kids to go to school or celebrating, achievements and people who have gone to school and things like that. So
It's
I
about
think that-
cigarettes,
Right.
alcohol,
right.
things of that nature.
Right.
Gambling. Go down to the casino.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go down to the casino and
Mhm.
call me if you have a gambling problem.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Hmm.
But you want
You know what? I never noticed that. I got to start paying attention
Sure.
to that. That's
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm.
either they will
Nope.
have, a memorializing someone who was shot and killed.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
before we go, I was asking this, and my computer crashed or something. But
Mhm.
do you live stream your services?
We do Zoom.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is that Sundays? Sunday at what time?
Sunday and Wednesday. Sunday at 11, and Wednesday at 7.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Bible.
Do you also have your services up for people to view after, like on YouTube?
So some are recorded. Not as much. And we're heading in more or less that direction. I know some of our younger people, that know these things more or less, and I'm getting more educated, and so our younger ones are getting more educated, and so we're going to probably be, I'll say, 100% in 2023 in that avenue. But we've been, I guess, mostly kind of focusing our attention over the last year or so on our congregation, and because our outreach is still very broad, as far as other ministries that we deal with. My wife has a ladies ministry, our men's ministry, couples ministry, and we're not meeting as much as far as couples are concerned. Our youth ministry, and so yeah, we're using those other areas to encourage, uplift, help strengthen, evangelize people, just people we meet all the time, that may not know us. My wife will tell you, she's waiting for me in the store, waiting for me. I'm in the store, and it could be the cashier, it could be at the drugstore, it could be somebody that said something, and I make it my business to share Christ. And
Awesome.
again, it's not about what color you are. If God opens up a door, I'm going to step in. And so
Great.
I encourage that for everybody. And I know my wife is the same. And just, that's what he told us to do.